In my own opinion, we have a very young and nascent wedding industry, especially when it comes to the area of wedding expos, wedding fairs, or wedding shows. I use all those terms interchangeably, even though I'm not sure if that's the correct approach, but for now, permit me to use all those terms interchangeably. Now, like I said, it's a very nascent industry, and it's an important way that wedding vendors like myself and you, who happen to be listening to the podcast, promote ourselves and reach out to new customers. Now, since it's very new, there's not been much activity that has been going on. I'm going to introduce you to two classes of participants, or rather organizers, when it comes to the wedding expo space. Unfortunately, most of the things we're going to talk about are limited to Lagos, Port Harcourt, and Abuja. Not because I can say definitively that those are the only places where we have action going on, but because that's all that I know for now. We have some players in the industry who organize these fairs biannually, and that's twice in a year, sometimes three times in a year. And then there are other players who are, let's say, partially consistent, who show up once in a while, who go quiet after a while, and then come back. I'm not going to bother mentioning those bridal shows that started and then for one reason or another went away, only to show up again maybe 2 or 3 years later. I'm going to leave those out of the conversation. I would refer to those as being partially consistent. So, what does the layout, what does the landscape for wedding shows and wedding expos look like in Nigeria? We have the wedding expo, which is the closest thing that we have right now that has national appeal. It used to hold regularly in Abuja. As far as I know, I think they did maybe 4 editions, of which I attended two. And they also have biannual shows in Lagos and I think Port Harcourt. Then there's the bridal experience, which is largely an Abuja thing, even though its founding body, which is the Brides and Babies Retail Outlet, has retail locations in I think Lagos, Abuja, and Houston. I think Houston, but the bridal experience, that's their show, only holds in Abuja. Then for those that are partially consistent, we have the A Class Wedding Fair and the Hilton Wedding Fair, and we'll get into those in some more detail. Now, why am I talking about wedding expos today? Because a lot of personal selling is involved at bridal shows, and if you remember from the first episode, the focus of this podcast and most of the conversations we're going to be having in the future is on personal selling. Personal selling involves going to where the end client is most of the time. So, for those of you who've done some research and look at some of the literature, you see things about door knocking, cold calling, things like that. It's the same sort of ethos that is involved in personal selling. And so, for those of us who don't mind taking a crack at personal selling, if there's a wedding fair and you think your ideal client is going to be there, you show up. Then another reason why I'm mentioning it is because I happened to attend the most recent bridal experience, which happened on Sunday, the 15th of March 2020. And so I want to use this to start the conversation and then in the future share some of my ideas about how we can make the best of wedding expos or bridal fairs, because you will find that it is a very contentious topic amongst vendors. Some who endorse it, some who don't think it's worth any value, and you have those who just do it because there's no better alternative at the moment. Now, what is the best wedding expo or the best wedding fair to attend? In my own opinion, it depends on a few factors. Number one, your target market. Number two, how qualified the brides and grooms who will be attending the wedding fairs are. how consistent the shows are, and also if the show organizers offer any form of vendor support, that is before and after the event. Now I'm going to run through some of these organizations, the fairs that I mentioned in the beginning, and then we'll discuss some of these issues that I just mentioned. Now we'll start with the largest and the longest running, which is the Wedding Expo. Now, the Wedding Expo uses a lot of broad-based mass marketing, so they're advertised on Bella Niger. Sometimes they're advertised in the national dailies, so they really, really draw huge crowds. I don't have any official statistics about how many people show up, but while I attended the two editions in Abuja, I don't think it would be an understatement to say uh, perhaps maybe 2 to 300 brides came through maybe every day. They typically run on a 3 day basis. Since it hasn't held in Abuja for a while, I don't know if they've changed their format, but the Wedding Expo used to be a Friday, Saturday, and a Sunday thing. How much did it cost? At the time that I attended, I picked a booth that cost about 80,000 naira. There were different classes of booths depending on how large they were and where they were placed in the where the particular booth was located in the hall. So there were some premium locations. So I don't have the figures for those. Now, vendor support. In my own opinion, I don't think there's any vendor support. Basically, you show up, you pay, and you get the space, the stand that was allocated to you. So that's it about the Wedding Expo. Now, for the bridal experience, I like the bridal experience because they take a more curated approach to the brides who attend, because they have a process that involves online registration. So you will find that the brides who come by your booth when you're at the bridal experience, that's the show that's organized by Brides and Babies, you will find that they've been pre-registered, and the customer, the client profile for the brides and grooms who show up to the bridal experience, you'll find that they're either current brides and baby customers. That means that they have bought their wedding gowns already from the brides and babies, or they are intending brides and babies customers. That's people who have come to the store and who intend to buy a wedding gown from brides and babies. Now, this is really important, and this is why I think the brides and grooms who show up at the bridal experience are better qualified, because they've taken the step to already buy the wedding gown. You can see that these people are clearly altar bound. They've already made some commitments, and you can tell that these people are going to be married anytime soon. Unfortunately, the Wedding Expo, even though it would draw huge crowds because it was mass advertised across different kinds of media, you would find that there were some people who were just passing through, who people who are just passing through, and those are not the kind of people that we wedding vendors that we would love to spend time with, especially when we fork out 80 grand to tie down a spot at the fair. And then finally, I think brides and babies who organize the bridal experience, I think they go through quite a bit to make sure that the people who show up at the stand already have actual wedding dates in view, or at the very least months in view. So my favorite is the bridal experience because I think they have the most qualified clientele walking through the booths. Okay, yeah, so that's it. Because of the screening process, I think they have the most qualified people. I also like the bridal experience because they have vendor support. The team is very helpful with sales tips, and you can find the proprietress of Brides and Babies and her husband mingling with the vendors on the day, trying to offer helpful tips, helpful advice, tips on follow up and stuff like that. Then another thing they do that I find really helpful is that every single bride who comes to the bridal fair is given I'm not sure what to call it, let me call it a gift bag. So they're given like a gift bag, and all the vendor details who were at the event are there. So it's not unusual for a vendor to have not spoken to a bride at the bridal experience, but who happened to be called anyway. That hasn't happened to me yet, but I've heard stories like that. The buy-in for the bridal experience for now is at 25,000 naira, and they don't have any prime. There's no prime real estate there, so we all pretty much have the same size, the same class of booth at the bridal experience. Now, for the A-class wedding fair, this is one of the not so. They've been on and off. Let me put it that way, but not to the extent that they're here this year and maybe they go away for 2 years and then they're back again. I think the focus for the A-class wedding fair is Northern Brides. Although the last time I was over at the office and I was having a chat with the management, it's something that they denied. Well, the impression that I got was that they took great pains to say that that was not the intention, but it just so happened that they pulled in northern crowds at the first two editions of the wedding fair. I attended two of their wedding fairs, and as at the date of this recording, we have skipped 1 year. Vendor support, I don't think they offer any. Okay, well, yes, well, there is some form of vendor support because they shout out everyone, every single person on their Instagram handle, and not just the big names as Wedding Expo does. And they offer some refreshments. So I guess you could say there's some form of vendor support. It also is the most affordable wedding fair that I've attended so far. I'm not going to say how much it is, so as not to embarrass the organizers, which is the A-class event, the A-class event center, and well, they have marquees for rent. Well, I'm not sure if they're going to be embarrassed by how much it is, the buy-in is. Then the final one I'm going to speak about today, excuse me, is the Hilton Wedding Fair. Now, the Hilton Wedding Fair, I also attended the first. No, I attended the second and the third edition. I missed out on the first, and as of the date of this recording, we have also skipped 1 year. So none held last year. Well, now in 2020, we'll see what 2020 has to offer. Now, the Hilton Wedding Fair I also like because it seems to draw in the right crowd. Let's say a more upscale crowd. But I don't think it's because of their advertising, or maybe because they have a pre-qualification process. I think it's just because it's the Transcorp Hilton Hotel, so only certain kinds of people would bother to show up for that kind of wedding fair. Now, they offer no vendor support, so you just pay your money and you're ushered to your stand, and the buy-in is about 50,000 naira. That's also per 50,000 naira, that's for the category of the stand that I selected. That's each time that I attended. So they also have the same philosophy like the Wedding Expo. So they have some premium booths available close to the runway stand, because the Hilton Wedding Fair ends with a fashion show. So the premium booths are those that are close to the center of the hall and close to the runway. Now, with all the things that I've mentioned so far, I'd like you to bear in mind some of the things that we're going to look into in the future conversations. One, are the large fees justified? You've heard me speak of ranges from 25,000 to 50,000 to 80,000. Are those large fees justified? Is this a good business expense? And how do you get the best out of bridal shows? So that's what the focus of the next episodes are going to be. And then when we're done with that, we can return to the initial topic that I started off with, which was an introduction to personal selling. So do not forget to subscribe on Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on Google. I can't remember what Google's podcast platform is, but wherever it is that you get your podcasts, please subscribe. Also, rate and review the podcast, and share your most valuable episode. This is not going to be very hard, especially since we have 2 episodes here. So your favorite episode is either this one or the one that came prior. And then don't forget to follow or send me a DM, a direct message on Instagram. You can find me there at Ayede_photography. Ayede is AYEDE. That is A for Alpha, Y for Yankee, E for Echo, D for Delta, and E for Echo. Ayede_photography. Thank you very much for listening. I'll catch you guys on the next episode.